Gas station at 2 a.m. It was just another graveyard shift at the gas station, and the clerk, Mike, had settled into the usual monotony of the night. The clock read 2:07 a.m., and the only company he had was a flickering fluorescent light and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the back. But, as always, the real entertainment was about to begin. A disheveled man, eyes redder than a brake light, stood at the register. He was holding a bag of chips and a bottle of orange soda, swaying slightly as if he were trying to keep time with a song only he could hear. The man just stared at him, slack-jawed, like he was trying to figure out how to operate his own tongue. Before Mike could say anything else, a car screeched into the lot and parked at pump 2. Though, parked might have been generous, as the car was halfway between the pump and a trash can. Out came another character. A guy in a leather jacket, walking with purpose. He pushed the door open with a loud bang and stood right next to the first customer, despite the ample space around them. The frozen customer turned to Mike, blinking slowly. "Relax, dude," he slurred, motioning for the new guy to go ahead of him. "Let him, go first." The man in the leather jacket nodded curtly. "10 on pump 2, he said, slapping a $10 bill onto the counter. Mike watched through the grimy glass as the guy started pumping gas. But then, as if the universe couldn't resist upping the chaos, another car pulled up right behind him. A middle-aged white man leaned out of the driver's side window and yelled, "Hey! Why didn't you park on the other side of the lot? There's more space over there." The man at pump 2 didn't even flinch. He calmly finished pumping gas, set the nozzle back, and then, without warning, doused the middle-aged man's car in about 1.50 worth of gas. The man then froze, watching in disbelief as the man lit a match, tossed it onto the car, and stepped back as it burst into flames. The middle-aged man in the car behind him screamed and reversed so quickly that he backed into a light pole. The man, unbothered, strolled back into the store, the fire reflecting in his dark sunglasses. Mike stared at him, mouth agape. What did you do?" Before the man could answer, the first customer, who had been silently spectating this entire scene, suddenly perked up. He looked down at his hands, where he was holding the very bag of chips and bottle of soda he'd been intending to buy. "Wait," he said, realization dawning on his face. "I already have these." He turned and walked out of the store, leaving Mike standing there, completely dumbfounded. It was one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. I was late for class. Again. And the only way to make it on time was to sprint through the hallway. Big mistake. In my haste, I didn't see Mrs. Henderson, the security guard, stepping out of the office. I collided with her full force, and let's just say it wasn't my finest moment. She wasn't hurt, but the principal didn't care. The next thing I knew, I was sentenced to 2 weeks of detention. Enter Buddy. Well, not Buddy. Coach McAllister, the gym teacher who runs detention, hates being called that. The first thing he said when I walked into the dingy room was, "If you call me Buddy, you're getting another week. I'm not your buddy." His face was dead serious, and I could tell he meant business. He's one of those old school, no-nonsense types who looks like he's been bench pressing since birth. I took a seat in the back, next to a guy who clearly had it worse than me. His name was Sam, and he got 2 months of detention for fighting during passing period. His knuckles were still a little red, so I didn't ask too many questions. What was weird, though, was the kid next to him, Sam's friend, who didn't even have detention. He just came because he didn't want to go home. Apparently, his house was a disaster zone, and detention was his version of peace and quiet. Sam and I became reluctant allies during those 2 weeks. He told me he got into the fight because someone insulted his little brother. "I'd do it again," he said, shrugging. His friend, meanwhile, just sat quietly, doodling in his notebook and avoiding the world. By the time my 2 weeks were up, I felt like I'd run a marathon. Coach McAllister gave me one last piece of advice before I left: stop running in the hallways. And don't call me Buddy. I didn't dare correct him, but in my head, I thought, sure thing. Buddy.